You know, the only thing more pathetic than Indians on TV is Indians watching Indians on TV.
The setup of the scene initially lends itself into our thematic statement, where we assume from prior context in the film that Thomas and Victor represent the ideas of reality and dreams, respectively. In this scene, the character Susie is a neutral body that is influenced freely by both sides of the spectrum. The scene starts with a pan shot from the television to the three characters having a meal. Thomas does not remain stationary as he moves from standing to sitting. His movement represents the fleeting nature of dreams and their view from individuals' perspectives. In comparison, Victor remains stationary, representing the grounded nature of reality.
So, Susie, what are you doing out here? Do you have a job or what?
Yeah, I work for Indian.
At this point, the point of view is an over-the-shoulder shot from Susie's perspective, which establishes several consecutive shots of this style. These shots lend to the conversation between Victor and Susie by giving the viewer the sense of experiencing the conversation through the character's perspective. During this series of shots, pay attention to the difference between Victor's unflinching eyes and Susie's combing eyes contact.
Health service. But I don't know if I have a job anymore. I haven't been back to work since I found your dad. I haven't talked to anybody since it happened.
Are you a nurse or something?
I used to be a nurse, but now I'm a hospital administrator.
What does that mean?
It means I travel too much.
I bet you've been everywhere then, ain't it?
Yeah, I've been a lot of places since I left home.
So where's home then?
New York.
Hey, Susie, this is pretty good bread.
The movement of Susie's eyes lends to the feeling the viewer gets from the dialogue about her life since the death of Victor's father. It is the feeling of avoidance when something bad has occurred that everyone can relate to. Once the tension of the situation seems to reach a peak, Thomas interjects. In the following shots, a camera angle is used that gives us the view of Thomas's perspective.
It's okay.
Hey, Victor, you should try some. It's almost as good as your mom's.
Ain't no bread good as mom's.
This is pretty close.
It's okay. Ain't even close to mom's, though.
At this point, the mood has been lightened by Thomas. The group has been opened by Victor shifting the positions in his chair. However, Victor never truly establishes eye contact with Thomas, which serves to further the disconnect between reality and dreams. Notice the following dialogue of the characters.
Victor's mom makes the best fry bread in the whole world.
Really?
It's so good they use it for communion back home. Arlene Joseph makes some Jesus fry bread. Fry bread that can walk across water. Fry bread rising from the dead.
Is that true? Huh? Come on, is that true?
Susie repositions herself in the frame and is now placed in between Victor and Thomas, lending to the idea of being torn between reality and fantasy. The dialogue of the section creates the idea that Victor does not even hear what Thomas is saying and cannot respond to the very notion of his story when asked. The lack of response causes the look of disdain on Susie's face as she does not want to accept the outlook from reality's view.
Way back when, we were having a feast on our...
A new camera angle is introduced, showing Thomas now sitting on the sofa with Susie, paying attention to him. This camera angle is the start of a long dolly shot, where the camera slowly moves towards Thomas's face. The dolly shot will slowly create an idea of importance towards Thomas and his side of the spectrum, dream. Also, notice the lighting of the shot, which allows the viewer to see all of Thomas's face, with the minimum amount of shadow. This emphasis on his face and the fact that his eyes are closed creates an idea of remembering something that happened long ago. At this point, music begins to play in the background as well, creating a sense of serenity.
Reservation. A good old feast.
Here, the film cuts to another location altogether. The setting is for the retelling of the feast through Thomas's eyes.
We didn't have a whole lot of food. Just a little bit of deer meat, a huge vat of mashed potatoes, some Coke, and fry bread. But the
A pan shot was used to slowly allow the viewer to gather information on the surroundings and on Arlene, Victor's mother. Notice the mise-en-scène in the shot. This creates a contradiction from what we know from earlier in the film, the modern reservation, and the story's reservation, a more rustic and traditional reservation. This begins the separation of Thomas's story from reality.
Fry bread made all the difference in the world. You see, a good piece of fry bread turned any meal into a feast. Everybody sat at the tables waiting for the cooks to come with the fry bread.
Susie has positioned herself in a way that there is no doubt that she is enthralled by Thomas and his story. Conversely, Victor in the background is paying no attention to Thomas. The lighting of the shot also casts a slight shadow on Victor's face, further disconnecting him from Thomas's story.
They waited and waited. But you see, there was 100 Indians at that feast and only 50 pieces of fry bread.
At this point, Thomas's monologue starts to seem less than credible, as he is describing the feast as there being 100 Indians at this feast, but only 50 pieces of fry bread. This is in contradiction to what we have been presented visually of the feast, as the only person present is Arlene.
Arlene kept trying to figure out what to do. I mean, it was her magical fry bread that everybody wanted, but Arlene knew what to do. You see, Arlene's fry bread was magic. Arlene was magic. She knew how to feed 100 Indians with only 50 pieces of fry bread. She went out to talk to the people. "Listen," she said. "There are 100 Indians here and only 50 pieces of fry bread." Everybody was mad. There was going to be a fry bread riot for sure. But then Arlene said, "But I have a way to feed you all."
During the story, Arlene is seen to be speaking, but Thomas's voice is what is heard. This cements the idea that this is not a recollection, but a dream Thomas has created. The dolly shot previously spoken of has approached Thomas to the point that they are fully engrossed in him and his story, regardless of their validity.
She took a piece of fry bread, she held it over her head, and she ripped it in half.
The sound of the ripping fry bread is amplified in his story to a point where it can be nothing but fantasy. When Arlene throws the piece off to the bottom left corner of the frame, we are given a sense that she is sending the story back to Thomas. This sense of a return to reality is coupled with Susie's laughter, which is the first character's voice we have heard besides Thomas's since the beginning of the story. The combination of laughter and facial expressions gives the viewer a sense of happiness with the situation.
Oh, that's a good story. Is that true? Is that true?
No, it's not true. Thomas, you're so full of shit.
Here, Susie seeks to validate the story as she has returned to reality. With the music having stopped, all we hear is the characters' voices, somewhat eliminating the feeling of joy. Susie questions Victor, checking to see if the tale is real. Victor's response is cold and blunt, which is in unison with how reality has been portrayed throughout the film.